T1 based PRIs, or up to 7 E1 based PRIs. And that's a lot of PRIs. So if you're doing a lot of ISDN, that would certainly be applicable and valid. Now that card is relatively expensive, so you're probably not going to just flood all the bridges with them. You're probably going to put them in very specific locations. Also on the back you'll see some plugins for IP, and you'll use those to connect the bridge to the various networks. Okay. Again, the control module has a beefed up processor in it, some additional storage built into it compared to the ARMX 2000. You also have some additional LAN connections that can go directly into that processor. The power supplies, as I mentioned, we have 3 power supplies. Any 2 power supplies will run the bridge. Okay, so as long as I have 2 of them up and running, I'm in great shape. Even if it's a fully loaded bridge, I'm good to go. I have power. Now, the RMX 4000 also has a 48 volt option. It is the only bridge we have of the 3 in the family that has a 48 volt option. So you can use it in a minus 48 environment, and it works very nicely there. Redundancy is very important on this bridge. As I mentioned, we have 3 power supplies. Any 2 will allow the bridge to continue to run. That's a good thing. The minus 48, as long as you have any 2 running, you should be in good shape power-wise. All the cards are field replaceable. In most cases, a couple screws, pop them out, pop them in. Many of them are hot swappable, including, of all things, the fan drawer, but there is a time limit before the cards begin to overheat. We don't really recommend that, but it's one of those things you could, if you have it ready, pop it out, put the new one in, and not have to reboot the bridge. In most cases, you don't have to reboot the bridge unless you have to replace the control module or one of the what's called the RTM module that's in the back. Then you would have to reboot the bridge or power it off during that change. Security, we're starting to see companies asking for more and more security, so what we have done is we're adding the ability to have the signaling on one address space and actually send the media across a different address space, trying to separate those. We're just getting into that, and it's a good way to improve the security of a video call. If you're interested in that, certainly work with your sales rep or your technical representative from Polycom. He can help you go through and see how that's designed. It may not be obvious how it's set up, so you want to work with them to get it set up right the first time. Here's a final look at all 3 of the bridges that we have out there, and those bridges are the 1500, the 2000, and 4000. Now I have added the DMA sitting on top of these bridges because the DMA in its capability can manage multiple bridges. As you can see there, the DMA has the capability of managing up to 64 bridges. Wow, that's a big capability. And so you can start treating multiple bridges and managing them from one place rather than having to look at 4 or 5 bridges to see what's going on. DMA can be a very powerful tool for you. If you are managing multiple bridges or deploying multiple bridges, consider looking at DMA very seriously. It could help you out. I want to thank you for your time. Of course, if you have more questions or need to dig a little deeper in the information, please go to the Polycom website at www.polycom.com. You can download all the documentation for the RMX, but be forewarned that the user's guide for the RMX bridge is over 900 pages in length. So you probably don't want to print it out, though it does fit really nicely on an iPad. So anyway, thanks for your time. Have a great day. Okay, so you found the memory stick that came with your RMX MCU.
You plugged it into your PC, and here's what popped up. Well, what we need to do is set the IP address for your RMX. So we'll use the land utility that came with the system. Double-click on it, and it's going to bring a window up that looks something like this. I don't want that address space to be 192. For my installation, it's going to be 10.233.1.245. And that's the control module address. That's the one that we're going to connect our web interface or our RMX manager into. It's also asking for a shelf management IP address. This is a maintenance address, maintenance IP address that can be used. It's not required, but it's recommended. So we're going to apply an address there, 233.1.24. In my case, I'm going to use 6. Now, my subnet mask for the area I'm in happens to be 255 by 255 by 255.0. And my default router address obviously needs to be something other than 192. It happens to be 10.233.0.1. Now, for me to set that up, I click OK, and it says its configuration file has been updated. Now, the file it's talking about is this lan.cfg file. I'm going to open it quickly in something called Notepad+. I find it to be a very handy tool. And you notice here we've done we've put in, or the program has automatically put in, the appropriate addresses, the ones that I typed in. And it put the appropriate keywords for each one. Now, could I have done this directly into this text file and followed this format? Absolutely. It just, the utility kind of helps you out a little bit. Okay, so next what we have to do is take this USB stick that we've changed this lan.cfg file on, turn around and plug it into the RMX. On the 2000 and the 4000, you need to plug it into the back of the RMX, not the front ports. Then, once you've plugged it in, you need to power up the RMX and give it about 2 minutes. And once those 2 minutes is over, you can remove the memory stick. On that boot, at that point, and from there on, the RMX should have the addresses that we gave in the lan.cfg file. At that point, we'll use the web interface or the web manager utility to talk to the RMX, and that's coming up next. Our next step is to connect to our RMX through a web interface. I'm using Internet Explorer, and that's what's recommended from Polycom. And I'm going to type in that IP address that we set up, 233.8.245. Okay, and I'm going to click the Enter key and try to connect to the RMX. So he's loading some pre-code, and we're waiting. And as you can see, it'll take a few minutes, or hopefully not minutes, but a few seconds. Okay, so we have loaded the RMX, and you can see we're running software code 7.2.2 in this situation. Username and password. By default from Polycom, when you first get an RMX, it does have one user ID set up on it, and it is the word Polycom, all capital letters, and capitalization does matter, and the password is Polycom. And I'm going to click Login. And you can see the RMX page has come up, but I had another window pop up, and I'm going to drag it over here so we can work on it. And that's the Fast Configuration Wizard. This is the actual tool used to help you set up your RMX quickly. The configuration wizard is looking for some other IP addresses, some additional addresses. Since we're doing or installing an RMX 2000, he's asking for the primary signaling host IP address. That address is the actual address used to start a call. And in my situation, that address is going to be 10.233.8.247. It's also asking for a media card, and that's the actual card where the video call, the media for the video call will be passed through, and the address. In this case, I'm going to use the address of 10.233.8.248. Okay? The bridge that I'm installing only has a single NPM card, so there's no need to add the second address. And as we talked about it, my subnet mask is accurate because it was set in the previous page. So I'm going to say next. Now it's asking for my default router address. Now he's picked all these up already, but that was for the web interface address, not for the address being used to send the video call and control the video call. So in this case, I need to specify 10.233.0.1. Okay? So I'm going to go to my next address. Now, where am I getting all these addresses from? They will actually be given to you, or should be given to you, by your IT group. They'll tell you what address space you're allowed to work in. So you need to go to them ahead of time. Now, the next thing that comes up is the service name for the network, and we're going to leave it as IP network service. You can make it whatever you want. You might change it because you might have multiple networks. You can specify the host name. This one can be any valid host name, and specify it there if you want. You can also add a DNS entry here if you want to. So you can specify a DNS domain name server to resolve addresses. In this case, I'm going to leave the default. Network type. In my situation, I'm installing strictly H323, so I will leave that the same. The next thing I'm going to do is specify a gatekeeper. Well, I'm just getting started, so I'm going to leave the gatekeeper blank. But if I had a CMA, if I had a path navigator, or potentially a DMA or VBP, all of which can have a gatekeeper, I would put the appropriate gatekeeper information in here. We got a message that says the IP network service was created. Now he's going to ask me about some other parameterization on the bridge, some system flags, all of which can very nicely be defaulted. So I'm just going to do a save, and once I do the save, the fast wizard is complete, and he will then automatically restart the MCU. And you'll see after a minute or two we'll lose connection. Now, this restart will take about 4 or 5 minutes, so I'm going to wait on that. Okay, the RMX has rebooted and actually come back to us. And so make sure if you change any addressing that you use the appropriate addressing here. For a username, again, I'm going to use my Polycom, all caps, and password of Polycom, all caps, and click Login. He should load us back into RMX, and you can see we are there. This is our status of our bridge, or actually any conferences that are ongoing, and you can see there are no conferences. Here's our frequently used and rarely used tabs. Now down here is our status message, and I see right off the bat we have a system error. I wonder what error that is. Well, I'm going to double click on it, and it's going to push it up, and it's going to tell me Polycom default user exists. For security reasons, it's recommended to delete this user and create your own user. So if you leave polycom.com